What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com coming to you with a little post-scrimmage walk and talk over here by the Willard and Pat Walker entry of Razorback Stadium. We were actually inside the Willard and Pat Walker Pavilion today because of rain. I don't know, it looks pretty dry out here to me. I've been inside the last 3 or 4 hours. Maybe it rained and dried up, I don't know. But maybe they could have gone inside the stadium. But anyway, they did it in there, just the way things work out. You never know with lightning and stuff like that. A little bit harder to judge everything when you're inside. So we're going to talk a little bit about the entire spring and really the overarching thing, which I think Sam Pittman really drove home today, and that's toughness. And, you know, I also think experience with this team. It's just such a veteran team. It's big, it's experienced. You've got so many returning guys, so many key transfer guys that are really going to help this team. Let's just kind of go over things position by position. Obviously, you got a known commodity with KJ Jefferson at quarterback. You'd just expect him to continue to get better, but a lot depends on how things look with those wide receivers. You know, how did the wide receivers and KJ Jefferson mesh? And I don't know if there's going to be like just a bell cow like they had with Traylon Burks last year. Obviously, we're all looking at Jaden Hazelwood, you know, who will continue to come on and get better. He's got a world of talent. I think guy that's maybe getting overlooked a little bit is Keitron Jackson. You know, Keitron was the top-rated recruit in the class last year, played a little bit raw as the coaches describe him. But, you know, I would expect him to have a chance to really put up some big numbers. And I'll say this too. They got to continue to work Malik Hornsby at wide receiver. And Sam Pittman alluded to that a little bit today in his post-game press conference, post-scrimmage press conference. And, I mean, I just think he's dead on. I could see Malik being a guy that, like, ends up with, like, 19 catches and averaging, like, 21 yards a catch or something, you know, just a really, really high average. I saw him out here, I think it was Tuesday. I saw KJ hit him on a 55-yard bomb, hit him on a 75-yard bomb, like back-to-back plays, one in team, one in pass skelly. I just think that. And I asked Jalen Catalon after practice today, I was like, what do you think as a defensive back when you line up there and then you see number 4 trot out there? And he's like, oh crap, you know, got to be aware of him because he can blow past anybody. So I just think that's a really intriguing thing to look at. And I know they're thin at quarterback. Good news is they feel good about Cade Fortin. You know, if something were to happen with both KJ and Malik, you know, because Malik's obviously going to be at a higher risk for injury. We know KJ's going to run the ball. He's had to come out of some games here and there. So how do you feel about Cade Fortin? That's a big question if you're going to be able to do this. And it sounds like they feel good about it. I think they need to do it. I think you've got a guy with that kind of speed. You got to get him out there. You just do. So I like that they're doing that. You know, running back wise, obviously Dominic Johnson hasn't been out there all spring. You know what you got in Dominic Johnson. I mean, so Rocket Sanders, you'd expect him to be that much better. And he's coming, you know, back from a shoulder that really limited him before. You know, AJ Green, Rashad DeBinion is a guy that they feel like is really, certainly, I mean, they feel like he's going to help them for sure next year. They like his stop and go, his shiftiness and all that stuff. So you've got a nice variety of running backs there. You know, we've talked about the offensive line. You got 4 starters returning from last year, and not just guys that returned from last year, but also the year before. Like, everybody's a 3rd or 4th year starter who's returning. You just got to figure out that left tackle spot. And, you know, is it going to be Takias Crawford, who we really haven't, you know, asked Pittman about all the guys that he's worked over there, because he's worked Brady Latham, who I think might be, like, as of today, like, kind of might be the favorite. Him or Luke Jones, you know, playing left guard or left tackle, which one, who goes where, you know. Takias Crawford, I think he looks so good. Like, he's always been big, but, like, he's starting to be, like, you know, he looks a little more like a power lifter, like a bodybuilder a little bit more than he has before. And to be like 350 pounds the way he is, it's just, the guy's got so much potential, so much ability, and they've been so pleased with him too. You almost feel like you got to find a way to get him on the field, but then you've got all these multi-year starters returning also. You know, got to figure some things out with him. You know, the second group of guys on the offensive line, they're just so big. Marion Harris, you can just see a guy like him one day. What does Marion Harris turn into? You know, Andrew Chamblee, who looks like he's been in the system for a while. Devon Manuel. Wait, I didn't even talk about Devon Manuel, who's 6'9", 360 something. I mean, the future is bright on this offensive line, and you kind of, you know, to be honest with you, you got to feel good about having brought in a really strong group of offensive linemen last year. And Patrick Kutas also, who I really like, who's not on campus yet, 6'6", 300-plus guy who's not on campus yet. And then, you know, because you always think you're going to, you know, probably redshirt your offensive lineman. And, you know, the next class we're talking about, you know, this could be a flashy class. It's already ranked number 3 nationally. Obviously, they've got to bring in some more big fish to stay there. But talking about bringing in some, big-time running backs, some big-time quarterbacks, more wide receivers, So I kind of like the way that shapes up for the future. But obviously we're talking about right now and, what's going to happen next year. Tight end, obviously you got Trey Knox. I think he's going to be a real weapon there. Nathan Bax has done some good things, and Hudson Henry has done some good things, but I think we're all really intrigued with what Trey Knox can bring to the table there, because he's about 240 right now, and he's a guy that's a receiver playing tight end in a lot of ways, but also getting bigger, so he's going to be able to help you in blocking and all that stuff too. Just a really veteran group on the offensive side of the ball that's just got to develop some chemistry with those wide receivers, and I think that'll happen. I think it will, and they have a chance to be really dangerous on offense, and just veteran and tough. That's the thing that we talk about, chemistry and culture and all this stuff, and that's part of the culture, is being a tough football team. I thought Sam Pittman said it great. It's great to have good players, but it doesn't really matter if they're not tough. So that's something they preach all the time, getting past your mental blocks. He talked about Keitron Parker today. Keitron Parker, who's kind of coming on at cornerback, and kind of felt like last year he was on the scout team and just kind of relegated himself to that, and kind of had a governor in his mind a little bit, like, this is where I am this year, and it's kind of taking it off. And I think you see that with a lot of guys, this spring. Flipping over to defense, let's talk special teams real quick, because you got Reed Bauer obviously at punter, Cam Little. Talk about a known commodity. Cam Little is just Mr. Clutch. So you have to feel good about your kicking game moving forward. Flipping over to the defense, I really feel, and this isn't anything against Nichols or Carter or Cam Ball or any of those guys, but man, you feel like you get one more mammoth. you get one more, if you can get a Ridgeway type or something, but you get some big dude in there who can keep that rotation going fresh and give you more opportunities to go with a four-man front. Man, that could be like the missing piece in a way. And again, it's nothing against those guys. You just need to rotate. You're going to have to rotate those defensive linemen a lot. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. Defensive end, I think they're in pretty good shape there. Obviously, we didn't even really see Landon Jackson, who's 6'7", 275. Jordan Dominic's coming in addition to having, Zach Williams and Eric Gregory and Jashad Stewart, Eric Thomas Jr., he's coming on as well. So, I think there are some things to be encouraged with on that defensive line, but just like that, it's not that you feel bad about it, because you don't, but like if you want to talk about like how can they get an edge on some people, one more interior defensive lineman. I know they're probably going after two as well. Linebacker situation, obviously having Bumper back is huge for him. His decision to come back was, I don't want to say transformative, but it was pretty darn big having Bumper Pool come back. The guy had 125 tackles last year, vastly experienced. But the talk today on the defensive side was Drew Sanders, who chased Malik, not that he chased him down, but made a great angle and ran down Malik. Hornsby, they just talk about how well he fights through blocks. He's got some swim move that he gets through people, and sometimes it's a swim move and sometimes he's coming straight at you, and he's 6'4", 235, 240. So he can do a lot of things, but everybody is really, really intrigued with Drew Sanders. I think we're probably going to see Bumper Pool, Drew Sanders start. That's how it was today. But Christopher Paul's another guy that's going to give him good minutes. He really is. Last year they were able to rotate those guys pretty freely. So Chris Paul, I was really impressed with Chris Paul, just the level of maturity. This is our first time talking to him, I think on Tuesday. The level of maturity that he brought, just sitting there talking, you can tell he's raised right. The lessons that he takes from his parents. He's got 6 older sisters. He's the only boy. All of those things, you're like, man, this guy's got it. Like maybe a team spokesperson type one day, but he's going to help them also. And they're a little thin on experience at linebacker overall, but you feel good about those three. And maybe somebody else comes on, throwing it to the secondary. It just feels like so much depth, really. Obviously you lose some key guys last year. One to the NFL, 2 to transfer, but you bring in Latavius Brini, you bring in Dwight McGlothern, and I think Malik Chavis has looked really good at corner, because McGlothern's had a hamstring, so he's been a little bit limited, but Chavis, he's a big, tall, rangy cornerback who can run and hit. He's looked good out there. They talk about Keitron Parker coming on, and I think you should feel pretty good about where they are right now overall at cornerback. Hudson Clark has a lot of experience. Ladarius Bishop, who started 8 games for him last year. It hasn't really even been the mix because he's been coming back from an injury. But that's another guy, once he gets healthy, he'll be able to push. And that's what's key about it. We talk about injuries and stuff like that. You're only as good as your second unit. I asked Jalen Catalon about that too after practice. Like, how the next guy's looking, because if anybody knows, he does, because he was injured all last year. You're only as good as your second unit, and then you got to rely on your third unit because you're going to need minutes from them too if somebody goes down. And so that's what I see. I like the depth that they have overall. Latavius Brini hasn't cracked the starting lineup yet, but you've got Simeon Blair, Jalen Catalon, you've got Jaden Johnson, who really played well as a freshman last year and has been starting all spring. And then you've got Miles Slusher working that nickel spot, which I think is kind of interesting because Jaden Johnson was a nickel last year, now he's a safety, and Slusher was a safety last year, now he's a nickel. Like, why is that different? What changed your mind on those guys? But it's important to make sure that those guys work all different kinds of positions, and that's what they've done, because as Barry Odom has said the other day, if you play somebody else's position, you know what their responsibilities is. So this guy's giving me help, or he's not giving me help, or all of those kinds of things. So it just helps the whole cohesiveness of that defensive secondary, and there's a lot to like about that group also. And not just the starters, but the second group also. So overall, my opinion on this team, I see a lot of veterans, a lot of guys that want to play, a lot of guys that love each other, love their coach, want to fight for each other. I mean, just the continuity that they have with the coordinators coming back, all of that stuff is really important. And you get the good schedule this year, the good schedule at home. It could be a really fun season, guys. And I mean, I'm not shying away from saying that they could possibly win 10 games this season in the regular season. I'm really not. And there's some things to figure out, but what I look out there and I see, just the first practice that I came out here, 12 practices ago, I'm like, man, these guys, they hadn't missed a beat. They look like they never stopped practicing from the bowl game. They're big, they're veteran, they got some speed, they got some size, some toughness, they got the right attitude, that chip on their shoulder. There's a lot to like about this team. I think about this football team, and I think about what's coming in basketball, and what is going to be there in baseball. I mean, it's been a pretty good 365 days, hasn't it? What's the next 365 look like? Don't get too far ahead of yourself. Enjoy where you are right now. You damn well deserved it, Razorback fan. I mean, you've been through it, hadn't you? But it makes it that much sweeter when things get turned around. I go back every once in a while, look at my walk and talks from Western Kentucky or Mississippi State back in 2019. And then I'll flip back, to the Texas game or, the Outback Bowl or something like that. It just puts things in perspective. So, I don't know. I felt the need to do a walk and talk today. So, it's it for this spring. We might do a summer walk and talk or something. Go to HawgSports, guys, if you haven't done so already. If you're not familiar with HawgSports, you want to know how to support the things that we do with Danny West, Curtis Wilkerson, Andrew Ellis. Those guys do a fantastic job covering all aspects of Razorback sports along with me, I hope. So appreciate you guys watching me, and go to HawgSports for all your Razorback news this offseason. All right, everybody, this has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, and we'll catch you next time.